Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. We'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order and welcome everyone to the Coeur d'Alene School District 271 Special Board of Trustees meeting of August 28th, 2024. Would everyone please rise, and together we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to go ahead and introduce our participants for this afternoon, and starting at my far right is Ms. Marianne Southwick, Clerk of the Board, Dr. Sean Hawker, our Superintendent. To my immediate left is Ms. Leslie Bierke, Vice Chair, Ms. Heather Tenbrink, Board Member, Ms. Ellie Anderton, Board Member, Mr. Jimmy McAndrew, Board Member, and I'm Rebecca Smith, Board Chair. Public comment is scheduled near the start of the meeting. Please sign up to speak at the entrance door. Thank you. Comments for those that are participating online can also be submitted via our clerk or sent to trustees@cdaschools.org. Is there a motion today to approve today's agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. We're going to start right away then today, and I'd like to go ahead and welcome Mr. McCollum up. You have 3 minutes to address the board, and just keep in mind we won't respond to public comment.
Good day to you all. Regarding the levy coming up, I'd like to remind everybody, not so much a comment, but a reminder that the issues you're dealing with now and have been dealing with for the last couple of years were brought to you and brought to light 2 years ago when a third party brought forward to the Long Range Planning Committee a slew of demographics that would have a great bearing on the then levy that was to be. And the current issues, like I said, are not changing. The biggest one is your enrollment. Enrollment was forecast to continue to go down for quite some time. So in the last 2 years, any surprise within this room doesn't float. You knew about it. The same thing with the demographics of the crashing birth rate, which was going to lower your enrollment. The rise in the older population, which was going to lower your enrollment. So again, none of this was a surprise or should have been a surprise. The other big issue that I see that you guys have as far as dealing with costs, okay, both fiscal and social or educational to the students, are the continuation of your dabbling with DEI, social justice, et cetera, et cetera. I've explained all these time and time again. It hasn't changed. The use of equity in anything has, for the last year, started to really show its face. It has a negative impact on society. It has a negative impact on our economy, both local and global. And the real cost that I fear of is the cost to the students. Equity, DEI, social justice, SEL, ad nauseum, really comes down to what is the cost to the students, okay? Because equity is an antithesis to meritocracy. And we all know it. We know it in our gut. We've known it for years, okay? But too many of us dance around it because it seems to be one of the fads that comes down from the universities all the way down, and it permeates society. The second real concern I have is, besides all of this, is because of the way you have to deal with cutting costs, cutting services, cutting out numbers of schools, which,
And Mr. McCollum, that's 3 minutes, so if you want to
okay,
wrap up, that'd be
the
great.
real question here is what impact does this all have on your deferred maintenance? It's a big one, and we all know it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Great. Thank you. Today we have a consent agenda before us regarding substitute pay. And is there any questions, comments? It's on consent, so. Is there a motion then to approve today's consent agenda? Or any questions?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I was going to ask some questions. Just,
Sure.
yeah, just, is there any, can we get an overview or a little bit of,
Sure. Eric,
Not
you want to come up
pertaining
and
to it.
give us, I was just keeping it there because it was on consent, so.
Good afternoon, Board. It is good to see you guys on a Wednesday afternoon. Exactly what would you like to know? And I'm happy to provide the answers.
question about it maybe playing into, do we have concerns about what kind of,
What we have is most of our subs,
where we're at, kind of looking at.
absolutely, absolutely. Most of our subs apply to be subs in multiple school districts, whether it's here, most of the time it's here in Post Falls. And they will take the jobs that pay the most. Now, we have a great, so far, as we have set up our sub pool, we have 70 subs that are already signed up and 60 more that are in the pool. So we are going to have plenty of subs. The issue is going to be at the secondary level. If they have an opportunity to go make as much more as Post Falls is paying than we are paying, we will not be able to fill as many of those positions and we'll end up being short. We haven't changed the sub rate for 2 to 3 years, and even those were marginal changes. This just gets us to be more competitive overall. The other thing, if you look at the memo, Post Falls is doing an interesting thing, and they're tiering their sub pay to where if you sub at the elementary school, you get a different rate than if you sub at the secondary level. That really does create a logjam for us. We'll have plenty of subs at elementary in all likelihood, but the secondary we will be short, and the secondary is where we need our subs right now. That's where the demand is coming from mostly.
So just to clarify, it's 120 across the board. We're not
120 across the board. We do not want to tier. We don't think that's necessarily our best approach. It makes it more difficult to track who gets paid what. It puts more pressure on payroll. It puts more pressure. People will take the secondary jobs and then leave the elementary alone. So, you know, to us, it looks like a lose-lose, and we would prefer to be able to fill them all equitably. And if we are within $5 of Post Falls a day at the secondary level, that is competitive. People won't drive from Coeur d'Alene then to go to Post Falls. When it's $15 or $20 more per day, right? And that's $100 a week. That pays for a lot of that gas. And that
Can
makes
I
a difference.
ask kind of a systems question? So it's been many years since I subbed, but it used to always be by phone. Are we filling most of our substitutes prior to the day that they're needed, or most of them on the morning, or are they done on a computer program now?
It's all through a computer program called Frontline. Anybody who puts in for a sub in advance is generally filled prior to the day. Most requests for subs will come in between 4 and 6:30 in the morning. And at that point, there's text messages that start going out and emails start going out, and then phone calls are made later in the day if people aren't picking up those sub jobs as they become available. Most of our subs have been trained that they wake up in the morning, and if they want to work, because remember, this is kind of if they want to sub on a particular day, they know to go on to the software platform, look for the kind of job they want. You know, somebody may only want to teach in elementary, so they'll look at all the elementary positions that are open and select one, and then that one gets wiped off the board.
Do all the neighboring districts use the same system?
I'm not sure what Post Falls does. I think they use Frontline.
Well, I'm just
I don't
wondering
know.
if a sub would hear from different districts and then they're picking and choosing.
Yes.
Okay,
They-
that's what I
Yeah.
wanted to
The-
really
the-
know.
The other platform may be different, but they're doing the same basic thing.
Okay.
And they will know what those
There's not a lot of
opportunities are.
time when you're getting a call in the morning to say, oh, hold on, let me check this other district if they're paying $5 more, but anyways,
Yeah,
okay.
No,
thanks.
it's kind of a thing.
That's helpful to know.
good, thank you.
Eric, with a switch this year back to doing it all in-house, or how's your team feeling about managing all of this?
We're feeling, Lindsay is doing a fantastic job. And like I said, she's already got 70 in the pool, and she's got 60 that she's working on interviewing and getting approved to sub. That'd be 130, and that is at, if not exceeding, what ESS had for us last year. So we are very, very confident and comfortable with where we are at in that regard.
I guess for myself, I'd like to see us be competitive with Post Falls, knowing that, and not just Post Falls, but Lakeland and everything as well, so. All of it. There is a motion, unless anyone has more questions, or. There's not a second yet, no, so there's just a first.
Just make sure that when you're speaking, they're not gonna text it online,
Talking
they can't
in.
hear you, so just make sure you're. So yes, there was a first by Heather.
Okay, Jimmy, did you have anything else you wanted
Nope,
to?
that's good. I just kind of wanted to discuss where, more so where we were at compared to years past.
I do agree, we need to be competitive, and I like the straight across raise. I think elementary subbing is extremely difficult, and there's no reason it should be less than high school.
There was
As a
there was
former elementary
considerable
teacher, I
debate
can
about
tell
that.
you
Yep.
that it is very difficult, in my opinion, more difficult than high school. So anyways, I'll second that motion.
Perfect. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Thank you, trustees.
Thank you, Eric. All right. We're going to go ahead then and move into our November 2024 election levy discussion. And Shannon, I believe, are you going to give us kind of a refresher?
Go ahead, Shannon,
on
come
where
on
we're
up.
at? Is that all right?
Chair Smith, you bet.
Yeah,
We can give
thanks.
any, we want to
Dr.
just answer any
Hucker.
kinds of questions. We have the presentation that was shared with you earlier in the month. We can certainly walk through that if you'd like, but we really hadn't planned to specifically
Okay.
do that. More so just answer questions, knowing that Trustee Tinbrink's absence at the beginning of the month, and hopefully she's had a chance to.
So I have had a chance to watch
Great.
the presentation.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I will
don't
be
know
up
that-
here for questions.
For my sake, I don't know that we need to repeat it, so.
All right. Well, trustees, is there questions for Shannon at this point? Or any thoughts? I don't know who wants to jump
Ladies
in,
first.
wade in first into the discussion, essentially.
Are you wanting to know where we all
Yeah,
stand?
well, I mean, or is there questions for Shannon, or we can just wade in?
I will say that we still haven't gotten the property tax relief allocation for for facilities yet. We're expecting it anytime this week, so I still don't have unknowns. It's still unknown at that point. And then we're still waiting on the 2024 operating property assessed value. So.
So maybe this is a dumb question, but I'm looking at the 25 million right off, and I see funding for teacher and supported. Gosh, that is loud. Sorry about that.
Oh, I know all of our, at least my mic, is your mic
Yeah.
is loud as well. Mine's really,
It
so
felt
ours
like-
is.
I'm okay with it, but
we're all
I just,
really
I
loud
feel
up
bad
here.
for the people here. So we got 9,645,000, which is identical year over year. So I guess my only question that, because I know where I'm I'm comfortable with moving forward with, but, so considering that we had, you know, a reduction of roughly 6% of personnel, that number being identical, how does that not move if we're talking about wages for fewer people? Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm asking it. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's
So, Shannon,
Yeah,
I think what you're asking.
yeah,
Okay. If we have fewer people working for us, right?
yeah, 69 roughly, or I don't know. If
But,
it's
but
60
we,
now.
but that came from a reduction in state funding, right? Correct?
that's correct.
Like state funding was reduced. And so that's already washed out, I think, in the reduced state funding.
But the reduction was due to a decline in enrollment, most of it. I know some was increased special ed costs, but a lot of it was
Right.
our declining enrollment. And so we do have, and should that continue, we're going to continue in the same vein.
With reduced state funding, right?
Well, with reduced enrollment.
Yeah.
Right, well, but reduced enrollment leads to reduced state
Yes.
funding.
Jimmy,
I
so
guess when I read additional positions, competitive wages and benefits, I totally understand that, but it's
Yeah.
identical to 2 years ago, or roughly identical to it. So if we're asking the local taxpayers to help with that, which we need to be competitive, we have this thing called Washington not far away. I'm just wondering how that number doesn't change when we have fewer additional positions, competitive wages and benefits to fund.
yeah, well, the amount actually has changed
Okay.
from the prior. So the kind of the line items and the FTE that's built into these line items, they're based off of our FY25 budget. So we have definitely, reduced our staffing based off of right sizing with support units and ADA. But this reflects currently what the FY25 FTE and the difference between what the state funds in terms of positions and also in terms of actual pay. Not only they don't fund as many positions that we need, but it's at a reduced amount, right? So we have to contribute, but the levy pays for additional positions and also additional competitive wages above and beyond those amounts. So that number equates to about 111 FTE that isn't encompassed in the other line items. So although, we've definitely tightened our belt with that 6 million, we still have more FTE than what the state funds, and that's what the levy covers.
So Shannon, it's 111 FTE equivalent. Okay,
Yeah,
so
just for that one line item. All
Okay.
these line items add up to around 210 FTE
okay.
full-time positions.
So we're not but I mean, some of that, as you said, some of that line item is the amount of wages we pay
Above and beyond.
what the state funds each
Correct.
teacher for. And so that,
as well as classified. The
Right.
state doesn't fund a
Classified, yes,
very
right.
high classified wage, so the levy definitely helps us
with the
fund.
classified
Yeah,
wages. Okay. So, so this is the equivalent of 111 FTE, but it's, and the amount we pay above?
yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So kind of referring back to our budget hearing, I had a chart really showing what the state funds in terms of FTE and the amount of funding we get for those FTE. And I showed that we couldn't simply just reduce those FTE if we didn't have the levy, because we pay more. So we would have to reduce the amount of FTE the state doesn't cover plus some because our wages are higher.
That was my major question.
So Trustee Smith, if I may just add,
Yeah,
just revisiting the meeting that we had earlier in the month as well. There's 2 resolutions for you to look at. One is keeping the levy flat at its current value. of $25 million. Or the other option would be to increase the levy by $750,000 each of those years, which is the anticipated inflationary, components. As we just simply discussed, I think it's just important to remember if we're predicting what that inflation is going to look like in 2026, and that's a ways down the road, obviously. So I think a 3% inflation component is very conservative, but very, I guess I feel like it's a good number that we would look at. Without doing, if we choose to keep the levy flat at 25, we're prepared to do that. We will just have to identify approximately $750,000 each year over the next 2 years to continue those reductions. And I just want to refresh, I guess, and just remind that's equivalent to let's just say that's 10 teachers. I don't, just $75,000, each employee with benefits and things. And so it does matter as we cut the levy, the impact of that levy. If inflation is 2, 3, 4% each of those years, then we will be needing to fine tune more. And you have fine tuned a lot this last year. Closed a school, reduced significant services across the board. We've reduced in lots of tough areas, and so I just want to. It's sometimes we forget, I think, where we're at from year to year and month to month, even with that. There's maybe a general perception as what I'm hearing Jimmy ask is that, hey, if you have less kids, why aren't we having a less of a levy amount? And I think those are fair questions that we need to make sure we're very clear and we can share out, with the community. It's complicated because I think we forget that just a couple years ago, the state changed funding to attendance, and that's essentially a 6 to 9% cut right there, because you're never going to have 100% attendance in anything you do. So even though the state may fund something for X, you're going to get 91, 92% of that if that's your attendance average for the year. So that's where we're at today, along with lots of other things, right? They made some big changes a few years ago in funding. And we've been able to hold that line real well. Our current $25 million levy, we've been surviving and living on that, and had some high inflationary components over those last 2 years of this current specific levy. So I think it goes to show that we're trying to be super conservative with where we're at. If the board's choice is to keep the levy the same, we will absolutely present to you over the next each year what may have to reduce. You've seen the levels. I think we got down to maybe level 3 or 4 on our cut list of our pre-prioritization list. And the next avenues would be, assuming all things are relatively stay the same, would be some of those 4s and 5s that are on that list. So that's some of our other enhanced programs are some elective courses, our elementary advanced programs. ALP, for instance, it's that level that is next on the reduction if we don't get the state to fund some things a little bit better for us, and if inflation stays relatively as anticipated in that couple 3% rate each of the next years. So hopefully that just captures a little bit of our conversations we've had for many months, quite frankly, and as well as earlier this last month. This month.
Thanks. I guess I'll just go ahead and start with the thoughts I've had. First of all, like mentioned before, we wish we didn't have to be here talking about this. This every 2 years does come by rather quickly. However, I appreciate that the school districts are one of the few taxing districts that allow the public to have a voice, and I feel like that's really important. So I will always support the public having a voice in either supporting or not this levy that we're requesting. After looking all the numbers and considering lots of things and looking at educational trends, for me personally, I am more comfortable keeping it status quo. The trend across the country is declining enrollment. I don't know how long that's going to keep for, but I don't think it's going to end this year. And it does seem like the past couple of years, the state has changed some of their funding, and we have gotten more, even though attendance is down. That's why we're getting less money. So for right now, I'm more comfortable staying status quo for a whole array of reasons that I can come back to. I don't want to hog all the time, but that's where I'm leaning at this time.
Thanks.
So I'm leaning towards 25.75, just to cover inflation. I think 3% is a pretty, I mean, that's assuming we return to normal inflationary levels, which we do seem to be doing. So, and so to not have to, to continue to provide the same level of service, I do think we need that extra 0.75. So, so that is my first choice. But I do understand these trends that lead to your first choice as well. So, but that's where I am.
Thanks. Jimmy?
Yeah, I've had PTSD since we started cutting. So I've been suffering that and living with it for a very long time. It feels like, well, Closing Bora was a nightmare for so many people. And if we could have gotten away with not doing that, I think we all, wish that there was a way. And we've made some really, really deep cuts. I don't think this surprises, honestly, I don't think any of this surprises us. We're dealing with fewer students, and but we have some great things going for us with regards to academic progress this last year. And for the morality of this district and all those teachers that are, reporting back to school this next week, I'd really like to avoid cutting anything further. It's just 6% has been really, really stinking deep. And I wish we could but I want to get this levy passed. So I'm torn because I think it's an easier sell rather than increasing taxes even a dime. I mean, I didn't come in here a 100% on increasing it. I was more like 60-40. And so tough. I'm looking at these 8 buckets because I know what we've done to each one of these buckets respectfully. We've cut health services. I'm a big proponent of extracurriculars for kids. I think it keeps them busy, helps out families dramatically. I think school safety is a non-negotiable for most parents and frankly, most taxpayers. They can get behind that. We've cut classroom resources gigantically. AP, if that goes away, we lose more students.
Dr. Hawker?
So I'm in favor of going with 25.75, and I'm cognizant that $11 is a lot to a lot of people in this, and the economy is pretty darn delicate. So I know that has an impact on people out here. So that's not lost on me. I just think cutting $6 million, we've done that, and I'd rather roll the dice at 25.75. That was a very long way to.
No, but I think what you're saying though is reflective of, I'm sure, what most of us are wrestling with our head. So
Thanks, Trustee McAndrew and Chair Smith. I my heart goes out to all of you for all of the work you've done this last several months, and it's not fun when we're cutting, and so I appreciate all the comments. I think my hope is that sometime you can show the community that even with this resolution as an example, if you choose 25 or 25.75, whatever ends up being the call today, if state funding improves, if property tax relief comes in at numbers that we think it might come in, you won't get to levy that much. You won't have to levy that much. And I think the time that happens is going to be a big deal to our community. They will see that, okay, even the board was given permission to levy 25. They're only going to levy 22, or I'm just throwing numbers out there, right? I'm anxiously waiting for that specific day to occur, and maybe it comes this next year. I don't know that yet. I wished we knew legislative property tax numbers at this juncture for next year, and we just don't. It's all based on how the state does this next year. But I'm sensitive to what you're saying as well, and that's why we were very careful to really only ask as an option for that inflationary component, which is on an average homeowner in town, if everything else stays the same, would be about $11 a year, so a little less than $1 a month, and we totally understand that. I think if you asked a lot of our community members, as I have tried to do over the last several months, if you were asked to pay $1 a month more to keep these programs rather than potentially losing some of these programs, generally the folks are supportive of that. But there's no question. I think our biggest question is to help our community understand the funding model, because when you are down of some kids, and I can't let the cat out of the bag today on enrollment, but next week we'll know much better. We on the docket is always the first Friday, I guess, of after we're back to school is that potential emergency resolution, which we've never had to deal with, but we could if we had a bunch of kids come in that were brand new, to us. But we'll get some enrollment numbers ironed out in the next week. In the next few weeks, things will be much better, and I do feel like things are trending in the right direction. I'm just not able to. We're just still working through all of those actual numbers. So I appreciate everybody's concern and conversation, and regardless, we'll make it work. Regardless of what you choose today, we're all in, and we're going to have the best educational opportunities for our kids that we can have.
I mean, the only silver lining is I looked at my property tax bill, on the website for the last 5 years, thankfully, because of local, fiscally conservative municipalities, and at the state level, my taxes, I looked up about 40 or 50 different property tax bills just to random sample, and every single one of them was at the lowest point that it's been in the last 5 years. Now there's some outliers out there, but I mean, we potentially are going to benefit at the result of what others have done to keep property taxes low. So that gives me a little bit of peace, because every dollar is a lot for the people that are, especially fixed incomes. It is what it is. And if that wasn't the case, it would be harder to swallow for sure. I think I'm done.
I guess my biggest concern is I'm definitely leaning towards the 25 million. My biggest concern being is if we do go with a bigger ask and the community doesn't like that, what cuts are we going to be having to make if that levy doesn't pass? I know how bad we need this. So I'm not willing to roll the dice on that extra amount. Just for those reasons. I think if we go out with a bigger ask, we're going to get more pushback from the community.
So I think what what's probably even more important for me, knowing that we're all in support, first of all, of pushing out the levy, is that we walk out of here united. That to me is pretty important. That knowing that we all are in favor of the levy, that we walk out of here. So all being able to say, all of us together, all 5 of us, voted on this and came to an agreement on where we were at. And so that to me is probably where this conversation then needs to go. And I've gone back and forth. And so for the same reasons, I asked that same question of you earlier this week so we cut all this. So, where's the cut then in the levy and how does that match up? And I think you answered part of that, a few minutes ago. So I think the bigger question is how do we all land on the same page, with our amount? Because that's really what I want. Is I want us to walk out of here being, nope, we're in agreement that we're going to do this and moving forward, because that's what the next 2 months need to look like. Do I have my thing like?
Oh, your microphone.
Oh, yeah.
I sent you again.
Oh yeah. No, I know it. Well, it was loud. Now it's not. Like,
I mean, clearly there is like you said, we are all supportive of putting it out there for
Right.
our community. We're in a different amounts. I too feel like we want this passed, correct?
Yeah.
A bigger ask is going to make it harder,
Yeah.
in my opinion. And I guess Ellie's too.
Yeah.
So for me, I can't go with the other amount. So
We get it.
that's just,
Will, really quick question. Is there anything that can impact this that we will be privy to in the next couple weeks? Enrollment, anything like that has the potential to skew these numbers, or?
More like maybe a few months. Enrollment will get ironed out. So no, I don't anticipate anything. And again, I think it's always important to remember that even if you choose to go after a $25 million levy and it passes, and the community has authorized you to levy up to $25 million, it's always an up to. So if by chance something changes this legislative session, and you only need to levy 22. I think, like I said, I'm looking forward to that day. I hope that happens. I also want to, again, publicly thank you all for the resolution that you did pass back in July to help work with our legislators to change this levy every 2 years. I think a 1 year, 2 year, or forever option is just not. It's just time for a change. I think if we can get our legislature to hear that cause, with your support, maybe this next session we could get something changed by the time we have to run a levy again in 2 years, at the expiration of this one, and maybe at that time we could go for 4 years or 6 years or whatever the interim might be, which I think could be. I just know it would be great for staff and the morale of our students and programs, as well as from a fiscal perspective, because we wouldn't have to be spending the dollars and the time associated with this every 2 years. So I'm optimistic to that. And so for that, with that, please know I could say if the 5 trustees could get behind the $25 million levy and just keep it flat like it is, I would be happy to even say I could make an administrative recommendation to do that, because I support what Chair Smith has said. I think it's really important for all 5 trustees to be on the same page, and I'm great with that. And I don't want that $750,000, that dollar a month. Let's not let that be a hang up one way or the other. Obviously we put it in there because I think it's the right thing to do too, because I'm with Jimmy. We know what programs may end up having to go. But it's also $750,000. If student enrollment changes, if the state funding changes, then we wouldn't need to levy that in the first place. So I think that's just a gamble that if if just staying at 25 created a unified board, walking out today with our community, quite frankly, we've got everything already prepared for a $25 million because that's what we did 2 years ago. So a lot of our communications and things wouldn't have to necessarily get changed to add that extra $750,000. So I know my team might be fretting, saying, oh no, but I think it's important for us to all be on the same, for you all to be on that same page as well.
So I agree. I think if we can all support 25 million and go out together as a whole group and explain to our community why we're asking for this, why we'd like it to pass, why it's important to our district, I think that would be really great. The challenge to this is, I mean, how many pieces of information have we talked about today that we don't know yet, right? Like it's all kind of looking in the glass ball, trying to forecast a few 2 to 3 years from now, right? So, but I am comfortable with 25 million if we can all kind of be united around that number. So, in fact, I could make a motion if I move to approve supplemental levy resolution 25-02 in the amount of 25 million as presented. Is that 25-02?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I just say thank you, Sean. I appreciate you kind of taking the bull by the horns on that and offering that up and the encouragement around that. So thanks again, thank you for stepping up with leadership on that. Appreciate it.
Well, good. Any other discussions? I was waiting, you know, come in at the end. So, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. All right. We will get after the work that is ahead of us for the next two months. So, thank you. We've got this afternoon, then we've got a board training that'll start at 3:00, and then we've got our special board meeting that is on the books if needed. On September 6th, we've got our regular board meeting on the 9th, and then our next workshop on the 23rd, right back here. So, is there a motion then today to adjourn today's meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Aye. See everyone this afternoon. Thank you to everyone in the back. Thanks.
Thank you, trustees.